So I'm at a gymnastics camp, and it was like the W400 out at the Texas Ranch or something. I think it was like W400, 300, 400. I think it was the 400. And we got, what do we got? Who we got there? Should we do some name dropping? Ooh, name dropping. Okay, so Tammy Biggs is there. All right, Mary Lee Tracy is there. I don't think Ivan was not at that one. And then there's a couple other guys that I don't really, they were kind of like college coaches. There was Justin Lowry. He was there. He's a cool guy. So at this camp, I'm listening, you know, you got to build up these conditioning drills and everyone's trying their different stuff. And I'm just pulling in all this information, okay? Just absorbing it all. What's going on? What's going on in this journey and in this story? And of course, I'm going to remember who Mary Lee Tracy is, right? Why wouldn't you remember her, right? It's my first time meeting her in person, but of course I'm going to remember her. And of course I'm going to remember who Tammy Biggs is, right? But that's not what I was locking in like, oh my goodness, I'm meeting Mary Lee Tracy, or oh my goodness, I'm meeting Tammy Biggs. That's not what I'm locking in on. What I'm locking in on is how they're approaching gymnastics and why they're saying what they're saying and what are they doing and what are they pursuing. And it is very interesting. There's an interesting story with Mary Lee Tracy that you may not know, have not picked up on. And I've gone back to try to find this video. And if you know Mary Lee Tracy, maybe you can find the video because she was in the interview. She's being interviewed by somebody, and her gymnast just did something. And Mary Lee Tracy says something to her along the lines of, you know, change your attitude, or like, it's a nicer way of basically saying check yourself. And the athlete, all the athlete did was something like super subtle. Like all the athlete did was like walk by the camera basically in the background and sigh like nothing big. And like Mary Lee Tracy like lets out like this very simple, very clear, very direct thing of like it's a mindset, right? And she's like, yo, it's a mindset problem. Like change your mindset essentially. But she does it in like the nicest, most subtle way. And so I was like watching, I just remember watching this interview and picking up on that and going, oh my goodness, like the subtlety and the nuance that this woman understands in, this coach understands in competitive gymnastics is just so far beyond what I understood, especially at the time. And so getting to now be in her presence and see how she's running this camp clinic, this course, and the way she's talking and the way everything has a purpose and everything has intention. And never did she raise her voice or show some form of intensity, and yet she was able to command people's attention. And I thought that was very interesting on the way her demeanor was. And so that was just props to her for how she ran that. But I just kind of picked up on that. I was like, I want to learn how to speak in a way. And I'm sure she's not, I mean, everybody has their own things, okay? Somebody probably can say, you know, bad things about everybody. But in this experience and what I experienced is that she understands how to get people's attention without having to elevate the intensity in the room or bring on more energy. And okay, maybe she conditioned her athletes till they realized the importance of quality or mindset. Who knows what she did? But the fact that she understands the value of it, that was very, very key and something I took away from that. And so I started looking at those subtle things and started paying attention a whole lot more to the little tiny nuances and trying to figure that out. And so thank you, Mary Lee Tracy, for showing me that side of things at the W400 course. And then there comes Tammy Biggs. Now, Tammy Biggs is interesting. Yeah, Tammy Biggs is very interesting. What a fantastic individual. Like, if you ever have the chance to go to something that Tammy Biggs is teaching, you should just do it. Even if you don't have athletes who are ever going to be at the level that she would be coaching at, you need to go watch Tammy Biggs teach gymnastics, because there is a lot going on that is so key to understanding this sport. And I don't think, I had this conversation with somebody who was a job hire, and she knows a lot of gymnastics, and I was telling her about my experience with just observing Tammy Biggs coach gymnastics. And this lady was just like, oh my goodness, Raleigh, like, does anybody know this about, like, does anyone talk about this? And I'm like, I don't think they do. But this is what I took away. And so I'm going to share it with you. This is a story about Tammy Biggs. And again, Tammy Biggs, if you know Tammy Biggs, correct me. Call me out and be like, Raleigh, that never happens, or she doesn't know. That's totally fine. But I've been to a clinic now 3 times with her. But these are the key takeaways that I took from it. And I think these are huge. So the first time I'm around her and she's, making the kids do the whole, like, all right, do everything on the floor. Quick, go to the beam. Okay, come back to the floor. Okay, go back to the beam. And the athletes are like, oh my goodness, I'm going to die. And they have no idea what's happening, right? Set 10 standing backflips. Now get back on the beam. Do 5 more. Now get back to the high beam. And the kids are just ping-ponging back and forth. I'm watching this, and I'm thinking, like, this lady's not using drills the way that other people are using drills. Like, she is doing something entirely different. She's using anxiety. She's using anxiety to drive performance. And it was like, this is cool and clever, and very clever, because I don't think I could emotionally handle the pacing that she was doing on a regular basis, but boy, does it work. The constant switching back and forth. And she's always, and at first I was like, is she aware that nobody finished her assignment? Because that's kind of how it is, right? She's like, go to the beam, do your thing. And before they're even finished, she's like calling them to the floor. And then she's telling them the next thing, da 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 da. And then before they're even finished, she's like, all right, we're going back to the beam. And there's kids who are like stragglers, right? It's fully intentional because every single time I've gone to a camp where Tammy Biggs is, that's what she does. And I had to think about this, like, why is she doing this? And I think I figured it out. Okay, it's not like I've called her on the phone and said, hey, Tammy, I think this is why you did it. But I'm going to share it with you, and then you can tell me if you think this is true. And maybe if Tammy, if you know her, she can comment and be like, yeah, Raleigh, this is true, or this is not true at all. But this is my observation. In competition, there's a level of anxiety that exists. And the problem with athletes who fall on beam, let's just say, or fall on bars, oftentimes is they do not train under similar or even more extreme situations of that anxiety. So when that anxiety comes out in competition, they're not actually prepared for it in training. Tammy Biggs is leveraging that fight or flight essentially inside the athlete to get them to push for more. She's also using a social pressure by making everyone go back and forth. There's always a first and there's always a last, and no one wants to be last. So the last becomes second to last, then third to last, and they start moving up the ranks, and there's this natural cycle that happens. So you're dealing with a level of anxiety, fight or flight. You're dealing with a social pressure, and you're dealing with a very specific timeline. You better get it in, otherwise we're going to switch. All of this stimuli that's happening in the athlete is going to get them to elevate to the next level. And what's great about this is you can't really plateau it. Now you can burn out from it because you're like exhausted. But you're not really going to plateau in a fight or flight situation, because when you are in a fight or flight situation, you can always create a bigger, scarier boogeyman essentially, right? And that's all a gymnastics skill is. And so all we have to do is go, oh, well, the backflip on the beam doesn't make you get into that fight or flight problem with this back and forth anxiety. Great, well, we'll just do standing layout step outs. Oh, that doesn't get you? Great, we'll just do gainer layout step. Oh, that doesn't get you? We'll do double layout step outs. Well, that doesn't get you? We'll do front flip. Like, you can always just up the ante. So you're never really going to plateau because you're leveraging the fight or flight system. You're using the anxiety with the timeline, and that just forces you to step your game up. And is very clever and very interesting. And I like it a lot. And I think it works great. And I don't know if there's any other coaches who actually do it in their training. But seeing how Tammy Biggs uses that, I'm very fascinated by it. And I think that is a very cool aspect of elevating the anxiety to get performance. And in a very, like, you know, there's a sense of urgency. But no one, I don't feel like the athletes are feeling like there's any demeaningness, like you're not good enough. There's not that. It's just there's a sense of urgency because there's this time, and if you don't get it in, she's just going to switch it to the next thing and then move on. So I just thought that was interesting. That's one thing about Tammy Biggs. The other thing about Tammy Biggs is during the first time I experienced her session being run, she didn't talk about drills the way I heard other people talk about drills. And what I found interesting is that she used skills to get other skills. Now, yes, Tammy Biggs used drills. Yes, there are drills that she uses. But it was interesting that she was talking about skills to get skills. And I asked her about this. I said, you know, I'm noticing that you're just saying do front walkovers or back walkovers, and then translate them into front handspring, back handsprings, and then translate them into layout step outs or front aerials or whatever it might be. And I'm just seeing skill to skill to skill. I'm not seeing these, you know, half steps drills. And she affirmed me on that, and she's like, yes, you're right. Just get a skill to get the other skill. Boom, mind blown. Like, do you know how much time you save if you just go from skill to skill to skill to skill? So much time. So much time is saved if you can go from skill to skill to skill. It's all the little drills that you have to put in between skill A to skill B, and you have to put all these little drills to get from skill A to skill B. Do this drill, do this drill. That takes up so much time. And nobody knows how to get from skill A to skill B. And it's just like, okay, it's a time and it's a numbers game. It's a time and numbers game. Get the skill, get the skill, get the skill. You got it? Good. Go now jump to the skill. Get this skill, get the skill, get the skill. And what Tammy Biggs does is she changes the surfaces. Okay, you can't do the back handspring on the high beam. Go do it on the floor. You can do it on the floor, do it on the panel mat. From the floor to the panel mat, it's still a back handspring. It's not a drill. She's not tearing apart the back handspring. She's still saying, do a back handspring, do a back handspring, now do a back handspring, now do a back handspring. And it's like skill, 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 skill. She's just changing the surface. Genius. Genius, because it changes the whole timeline. Now you're getting high numbers and high volume of one skill. You're just changing the surface, and you're using that skill to leverage for the next skill. And you'd see her do this where now she would upgrade maybe the floor, but downgrade maybe the high beam. And so you'd be able to go, okay, well, we're going to do layout step outs over here, but we're going to do standing back handsprings over there. And so it's skill, skill, skill. It's a lot of skill stuff. It's interesting. The third thing that Tammy Biggs said, and this was when I was at Salciano, I think I pronounced their name correctly. Shape it right, shape it right camp in Las Vegas area, Henderson, somewhere around there. Tammy Biggs says, she goes, there's no such thing as a difficult skill. There's no such thing as a difficult skill. I once posted on a gymnastics forum that made me seem very egotistical and arrogant because I was like, basically like, oh, we shouldn't be really impressed by people's difficult skills. Because Tammy Biggs says that there's no such thing as a difficult skill. And everyone wants to, you know, of course, it's just like setting myself up to be argued with. But there's no such thing as a difficult skill. What does she mean by that? Well, now I have to ask her. And it's like, okay, when you first try to learn to ride your bike, it's challenging. But once you know how to ride your bike, it's not challenging anymore. And the point is not to get hung up on the process of getting the skill. The point is that once you get the skill, it's not difficult anymore. It changes the learning curve. Now, you could argue and say, well, Raleigh, it's still really hard and whatever, but that's not the point that she was trying to make. It's a mindset shift. If I mindset shift say that this skill is difficult and then I live in that, I will never get to the point where the skill becomes easy. And if I'm competing at a point where the skills that I think are difficult, think about the mindset shift that's going to have on me as a competitive athlete. And so part of it is understanding that, yes, learning the double backflip is hard. But once you can do the double backflip, it's not as hard as you think it is. The level, the learning curve, the effort driving it, it's not there. So there's no such thing as a difficult skill. I just like, that's a phenomenal way to approach gymnastics because it changes the like, we're never going to get it, that's such a hard skill. It changes that attitude. It shifts the whole perspective of saying, look, once you get it, it's no longer difficult. So let's get it. Let's get hungry for it. And so those are the three takeaways that I basically got from watching Tammy Biggs. And I'm sure there's more, but those are the three ones that stand out to me. And I thought that was a really, really insightful way of approaching gymnastics, and it really shifted and pivoted how I coach. So thank you, Tammy Biggs. Thank you, Mary Lee Tracy. And like, subscribe, comment below if you have any more thoughts or any experiences you've had that are positive that you think that have shifted or shaped how you look at gymnastics. Let me know. Love to hear about it. Bye.